Why don't we start all the way over here and we'll do every single one of them? Well, what is a perfect movie? There aren't that many movies you think of as perfect. You know, this is another kind of Bible. Studio Ghibli in general is a treasure for cinema. It's not that it's my favorite Renoir, but it's as good as my favorite Renoir. The first draft was perfect. It's like Mozart.
Welcome. It's one of the last two video stores that we have in Paris. What is your relationship with the physical edition, video store, renting DVDs and everything?
Yes, that's how I used to spend half of my time, going to bookstores and places to find movies. The thing is, you can search around online all you want, but it's a completely different experience from walking through the shelves and also having, in this case, for instance, the curation of a group of people who are interested in movies and who are going to tell us what they like and discover things to introduce them to us. Well, why don't we start all the way over here and we'll do every single one of them. Okay. Okay, so this one, Vengeance is Mine, this I saw first on Laserdisc. So that's going back quite a long time ago. This is a great, very long, sort of serial killer movie, but really striking and very entertaining, and one I strongly recommend. And this is Drunken Angel. This is Kurosawa. This is an early Kurosawa with Toshiro Mifune. We used music from this in our movie Isle of Dogs, and it's very beautiful. It's a movie that's sort of set in a poor neighborhood, but it's all on a set, and this doctor who's like a saint, and then Toshiro Mifune is his patient. He's the drunken angel. Simon of the Desert. You know, I read somewhere Mike Nichols saying that when he was working, he would think of Buñuel essentially every day, because he felt like Buñuel had the greatest recipe. Whatever situation he was in, he could just go to his imagination for a solution. He could go any direction he wanted. And so his movies, even with his collaborators, even with Jean-Claude Carrière, who he wrote so many films with, they're so purely from his imagination, and they work. There are certain kind of movies where you can't really understand how they function. The artist has such a strong hand, he can take us anywhere he wants. Let's see what's next. Oh, so here we have some. This is City Streets.
Hey, you! What do you know about this murder?
Which is now also in a Blu-ray, a very, very good Blu-ray. And this is Ruben Mamoulian, who I really love. Mamoulian did Love Me Tonight with Maurice Chevalier and Jeanette MacDonald, which is almost like a Lubit. He did Applause. Look up the Mamoulians to remind me.
Queen Christina
with Garbo.
Silk Stockings.
Silk Stockings is a remake of Ninochka as a musical, but there's earlier ones. We Live Again is his sort of Chekhovian one. And then what's the next one?
Becky Sharp.
Becky Sharp. Now that's a great one.
Miss Sharp, the time has come.
Oui, oui, mademoiselle. Je vais vous faire mes adieux.
I think it's the first three-strip Technicolor. Okay. It's with Miriam Hopkins. Becky Sharp is Vanity Fair, and that's a movie I would also strongly recommend. It looks like the two-strip Technicolor, to me anyway. It looks like two-strip Technicolor. It doesn't look like full Technicolor, but it's the first one that was three-strip. And then there's also he did two with Tyrone Power, The Mark of Zorro, yeah, and Blood and Sand, right? Yes, and those are also very similar to each other and both great. But anyway, that's a long bit on Ruben Mamoulian. And this one I showed my daughter.
I consider sleep-tight pajamas a quality product, Mr. Hassler.
I was never a huge musical person. I didn't watch that many musicals, but I've started to be because my daughter loves them. And this is one I particularly love. The Pajama Game, Stanley Donen. There's a sequence called where they do a song called Steam Heat that is really unforgettable. But the whole movie is great, and the colors are great. And the other one I had mentioned to you earlier, Le Chant de Missouri.
With my high starch collar and my high top shoes and my hair piled high up on my head.
That's Vincente Minnelli, and that's my favorite of his movies, and one of my favorite musicals of ever. Judy Garland. Sadie McKee, it's directed by Clarence Brown. It has the song All I Do Is Dream of You. That was written for this film, and it's Gene Raymond who sings it.
All I do the whole day through is dream of you.
You know, it's her movie. The men are strangely flawed. They're both Gene Raymond, his behavior, he's essentially a bad guy. I mean, he immediately betrays her when he has the first opportunity. He never does good. And Franchotone doesn't believe in her the way he pretends to at the beginning of the film. He doesn't stand up for her. The men let her down, but yet they're treated essentially as good characters. They're treated with sympathy. It's a strange mixture. They're strange characters. And she's great. And this is a wonderful movie. I strongly recommend. Let's see. The Tall Target. You've got that. This is Anthony Mann. You know, he did his movies T-Men and Raw Deal that he made with John Alton, the cinematographer, and another one with him is Border Incident. I think that's after those. This one has very much the same sort of style, sort of deep focus photography, wide angle lenses. The blocking has a lot of depth, people close to the camera, and very striking. And this is about an assassination attempt of Abraham Lincoln and Dick Powell's attempts to thwart it. He works for the New York police. He had been a federal agent, something like that. It's all on a train journey, and it's a great cast. Really very good movie. Bad Day at Black Rock.
You got a big mouth, boy. Making accusations, disturbing the peace.
For this new movie, Asteroid City, we essentially completely stole the title sequence from this, which was not easy to do. And this is a great movie. John Sturges, Spencer Tracy, Robert Ryan, who's great in it and scary. Streetcar Named Desire. This also kind of connects to our new movie.
For the Adrian Brody character.
Exactly. For Adrian Brody is something like a Kazan sort of figure in our movie. But this is a movie that made a huge impression on me when I was probably 16 or something like that. Little Lord Fauntleroy, yes. Well, I'll tell you who's great in it. The scenes between Freddie Bartholomew and C. Aubrey Smith, who plays the Lord, who is actually his great-grandfather, I guess, I think, who he's never met before, his sort of estranged relation. And they form a very strong bond, and the scenes are very, very good. Marie Antoinette, yes. This one is very interesting. Norma Shearer. Robert Morley is Louis XVI. He's great in it. But this is a giant production. The reason I saw it is because I had a conversation with James Ivory. We were talking about something, and he referred to seeing this movie when it was in the cinema. And I realized in 1930, he went to see it in the cinema. For him, it was like Star Wars. Yeah, he went to this, and it made a huge impression on him. He loved this movie. It was a great movie-going experience in 1938. And Jim is 94 or something, so he's been going to movies for a very long time. I love Louis Malle.
Monsieur Alain, vous n'avez pas changé.
Un peu grossi peut-être.
Vous avez bonne mine.
Bientôt 300, vous pensez?
Vous venez d'arriver.
Vous restez un peu.
Alors l'Amérique, ça vous plaît?
He's one of my favorites, and his whole body of work is, there's such diversity, and there's both this wonderful filmmaker, wonderful director, but also this sort of, I don't know what you would say, he's sort of an anthropologist. There's someone who's investigating people, and his whole life as a filmmaker is this grand search that goes all over the world. And let's see. Classe to Risque, this is a Claude Sauté.
Et là-bas! Qu'est-ce que vous faites là?
A Claude Sauté sort of crime noir, which is not really how we think of him from his later work, but it's a very good one.
How and when did you discover all those French?
Well, Encore un hiver I saw in the cinema. It came out in America. But his other films I saw in the course of time, Max et les Ferrailleurs, you know that one? Yeah, that's a great one, which was not very readily available subtitled until quite recently.
So you watch it in French?
I watched it in French, and then now I've seen it in English. And Tati. We all love Tati. Agnès Varda, where I live in Paris is not far from her Rue Daguerre. Anyway, she's sort of one of those people who you look to like a sort of hero model. Like Louis Malle, her interests are so broad and wide, and her personality is so strong. There's something particularly sort of bohemian about her approach to her life and work, and gathering groups of characters around her, and sort of celebrating them. We've got a Renoir here.
Oh, vous la blanchisseuse, foutez-moi la paix.
Oh, c'est la machine à coudre qui vous rend nerveux.
La machine à coudre, je suis dactylographe.
Et on va des dactylos comme vous.
You know, this is a fairly early Renoir, but fully formed. He's completely in command of what he's doing, and it's and there are scenes with large numbers of people all at once, and an overlapping and complicated blocking, and it's just so natural and full of life. And also, it sort of has his credo, that is, everyone has his reasons, you know. Even the villain of the story is very charming and very interesting, and everyone sort of gets their place in it. It's a top-level Renoir. It's not that it's my favorite Renoir, but it's as good as my favorite Renoirs. It goes in the same category as Grand Illusion, Rules of the Game. You know, I love Tony also. That's another one. Do people pick that one sometimes? No, they don't pick Tony. Good. Let's see. There's a Truffaut. The Man Who Loved Women.
Alors vous dites que moi je vous ai regardé dans le restaurant? Je ne vous ai même pas vu, où étiez-vous?
Enfin, écoutez, vous ne pouvez pas dire que vous ne m'avez pas regardé.
This is interesting because this is a sort of later period Truffaut, and it's almost like Truffaut writing a little novel. I mean, it has first of all, he's a writer. He's writing the story as he goes. Truffaut loves books. His movies are filled with books. They're filled with words. In a different way from Godard's movies are filled with people actually reading the books to us, or big words across the screen. And Truffaut has his own approach, but it's equally as almost fetishistic about words and books. Then this one is fetishistic in other ways as well. But this is a very, extremely personal, I think, and I think it's a very charming movie and a very good one. Okay. So this we bring up mentioning Alexandre Desplat, whose score for this is one of his very best. I mean, when I saw the movie, I thought the movie was great, but the score in particular, the opening sequence is all music. It's a piece that I must have listened to 100 times. So this is a great maestro. The first one we did together was Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Now these three crazy jackets had a hero on the run, shot the tail off the cuss with a fox shooting gun.
This Bridge of Spies, there's two people. First, Steven Spielberg, who is, if you make movies, if you direct movies, this is somebody who can help you. You look to his movies for solutions. He usually found a way to do it right. He's one of my favorites, and Adam Stockhausen, my production designer, has made 3 films with him, I think. So it was quite a thing because, he saw Adam's work in my films and decided he wanted him too. So now we share Adam.
And there's Tom Hanks there.
And Tom Hanks, as you can see, who's in our new movie.
The first one that you made with him.
I've met him before over the years, but this was my first chance to work with him. Now here's 2, Barfly and Drugstore Cowboy. Drugstore Cowboy, well, this was always a favorite film of mine, and Owen Wilson. We went to see this when it came out in the cinema again and again and again. We love Matt Dillon, who's in Asteroid City, this my new movie. Robert Yeoman, the director of photography of this, I must have made 10 movies with him or something, or 8. I knew him from this, and that's why I asked to meet him, and we joined forces. And probably around the same time is Barbet Schroeder's film, Barfly, with an unbelievable performance from Mickey Rourke.
To all my friends!
And also Faye Dunaway. Robbie Mueller shot this one, and I said to Barbet Schroeder, I love the dreamlike quality of it. It's sort of like it's a fable. And he said, that's exactly everything I hate. I don't like dreamlike. I don't like fable. I want reality, realistic. I said, oh, okay. Well, I like it anyway. Because to me, it has a grittiness about it, but it's very sort of poetic. I don't see it as exactly realistic. It's not, you would never mistake this for a documentary. It's much more sort of artful, and the performances have something more sort of mythic about them. I don't mean it lacks specificity. It has that completely, and that's why it's great. And maybe that's partly what Barbet's saying. But what Barbet said is maybe it's Bukowski's fault. That's what he said. I said, maybe it is. This is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oompa, loompa, doompa-dee-da. If you're not greedy, you will go far.
I just made a series of short films. I have a new one, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, which is a court-métrage, but it's like 40 minutes.
Okay.
So it's a long court-métrage. The thing with Dahl is he's a wonderful writer. His scenes are perfectly rendered, wonderfully described, but he is also a great inventor of plot, of story ideas, and really gripping ones. So when Netflix bought his estate for $1 billion or whatever they paid for it, they got a lot. They got a lot of stories, and there's a tremendous amount of material. And you know, once Noah Baumbach and when we made Fantastic Mr. Fox, we spent quite a lot of time at Dahl's house where he had lived, Gypsy House in Buckinghamshire. Well, they had made an archive out of a billiard room, and we went through all these notebooks and things, and there were hundreds and hundreds of ideas for stories that he hadn't written, and many of those are like, well, that would have been good. That was his mind. He invented stories just naturally and continuously. This I had mentioned because I've seen it recently. This is Kevin Brownlow's documentary from the late 70s.
Noah's Ark, one of the last silent films, had dialogue scenes added, but it still displayed all the spectacle which audiences of the silent era had come to expect from Hollywood.
It must be 8 or 10 hours long, and it's many episodes, and it's a BBC program, and what it contains is they were all alive. So many of the people who made silent films were at the end of their lives, and he got them all, and they're in this. Gloria Swanson is interviewed in this, and people in many different roles, directors and stuntmen. Even if you're not interested in silent films, this will get you interested in silent films. It's on YouTube. Okay. You can see it. So we can see you just type it in and up it, and away it goes.
That one I was curious, that it kind of differ from everything that you've picked.
Yes, it was the first one that came to mind. You know, I kind of always think, well, what is a perfect movie? There aren't that many movies you think of as perfect. There are movies that are great and powerful, but then every now and then there's one that's great, but it's also just sort of perfect. Yeah. And this one is quite simple, but everything about it works perfectly. It's not very long, and it's very direct, and Harrison Ford is so good in it, but so is Kelly McGillis and Lucas Haas, the little boy. Danny Glover is in it. The unforgettable scene is Lucas Haas realizing who has done this. He sees in this police station a photograph of who the killer is, and Harrison Ford comes over and looks at the picture and puts his finger down like that. And there's so many moments like that that are so sort of cinematic and unforgettable. And Peter Weir, a great director. I mean, Peter Weir has a big body of work of many great movies. So, Witness. And then I met the editor of this film once, Tom Noble. He told me that the movie is essentially the assembly, which means that Peter Weir shot the movie, and as he sent the footage to his editor put it together for them to later work on it. But it was such a simple task of just putting it together the way he shot it. He just put it together, and that was the movie. They added the music. According to Tom Noble, it was one of the simplest movies to edit, and that's a sign of something. That's a sign that everything was. That's part of, I think, what makes it perfect. It's sort of like the first draft was perfect. It's like Mozart. So Witness, that's one.
Is that something that happened to you? Like shooting a movie that was very, very simple to edit?
No. No? Never. I've made movies where we used every shot we'd done, which is pretty unusual to use every shot, but I've never made a movie where you didn't sort of have to force it to work. But I think that's sort of normal. I mean...
Even in animation?
It's a bit different in animation because you edit it really before you shoot it. You edit it in storyboards. But even then, once it's all together and it's animated, then you still have, okay, what's working and what's not working. You then have the experience of watching what you've made fully, and you say, okay, there's some problems, and some things we can improve. Let's go look at the animation. Okay, they're Japanese. Neon Genesis Evangelion, this is a strange series, and they're very peculiar, and they're, sometimes someone makes a fiction and it's so complicated that people will get so absorbed in it that they could turn it into a religion. Like Scientology, you know, I think is the work of a fiction writer, but he's created something that people can get so interested in that they sort of they're not interested in quite the reality anymore. This is one of those kind of things. I could easily see someone becoming a Neon Genesis Evangelion fanatic and making it their religion. This is Only Yesterday. Now this one isn't, this is Takahata. This is Miyazaki's sort of partner in Studio Ghibli. And this one's very good because it's sort of a grown-up story. It's interesting. It's a sort of a memory story. But there's always something in usually if you see Japanese movies in particular, any movie from another culture, you're going to learn about how they do things there. But in this case, the vacation is done to volunteer in a harvest. In return, you get to stay in the country. But we don't do that in America. You have to pay people. But this is a very touching one. But also Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli in general, that's one of those great bodies of work that is something, you know, a treasure for cinema. So I think, you know, over the last 10 years, he's become so international. People know Miyazaki everywhere. The way he was in Japan, he sort of is all over the world now. Well, you know, I think what are the other ones? Takahata. There's another. He did the Pompoko also. That's a good one. He has a bit of a different voice from Miyazaki, but they always helped each other with their films. And you know, he's still going. There's a Miyazaki in progress now, I think. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Nice to talk with Miyazaki.
Very interesting.
Great.
Konbini!
I would say, yes. So that's Vertigo.